right, I think we are ready to begin. If you want to take your seat. Well, good afternoon. I'm Daniele Struppa. I'm president of Chapman University. And we have a great panel for you on, the title is, Why Do Dyslexics Make Great Entrepreneurs? I'm going to very briefly introduce the panel and tell you my motivation for being here, and then we're gonna get started. So Douglas Merril, to my left, yes, to my immediate left, founder and CEO of ZestFinance, a Los Angeles-based financial technology company. They're using machine learning and data science to help companies make more accurate credit decisions. Former CIO and VP of engineering at Google, Douglas led an organization of 1,500, oversaw all aspects of internal engineering and technology, and drove multiple strategic efforts, including Google's IPO auction in 2004. He also served as CEO of New Music, the Emmy Group, as Senior Vice President of Infrastructure and HR Strategy at Charles Schwab, information scientist at Rand Corporation. He has a PhD in cognitive science from Princeton, and is the author of, quote, Getting Organized in the Google Era, How to Get Stuff Out of Your Head, Find It When You Need It, and Get It Done Right.
Although apparently I can't write a brief bio, Jesus. Sorry.
And actually, this bio is already a shortened version of what I got from Pat. So.
Oh, Lord.
Patrick Quinlan, entrepreneur at heart, has a passion and skill for building companies from the ground up. Prior to leading Convercent executive team, Patrick served as a chief executive officer of Rivet Software, another technology firm operating in governance, risk, and compliance space. And in just 2 years, he propelled Rivet from $240,000 quarterly revenue to $12 million quarterly revenue. He's been recognized as one of the Denver's top 40 under 40. And in 2001 was one of the finalists in the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year. And then finally, John Chambers, a legend that probably doesn't need introduction, but at least one thing that I need to say about him is that French President Macron named him Global Ambassador for French Technology. And so, of course, you know, we all know about this Cisco career culminated into President, Chairman of the Board, CEO. So we are very pleased to have you all here with us. I'm a university president, so my job is to recruit the best possible student we get. And then after we recruit them, my job is to make sure that they graduate and they succeed. And they have the kind of university structure that makes them successful. And surprisingly, or maybe not surprisingly, universities are not very well versed in these two apparently simple tasks. We don't do a very good job of recruiting students. In fact, universities are obsessed with metrics like the SAT and the ACT that are good for some subgroup of students, but not necessarily a good screening for the kind of people that are going to be very successful. And even when we are able, through luck, to get some cognitive diversity in the university, then universities are not prepared to work with students who learn differently. So for me, this panel is important from a point of view of what I need to do for my job. And I'm glad to see Jamie here in the audience, because that's how my conversation and my learning on this aspect got started a few years ago. So maybe the first question I'd like to ask the panel, and we go in line, and then I'm sure we'll jump over each other, is tell us a little bit about how you came to be where you are, and what led you into the entrepreneurial world, and what, if any, role dyslexia played, positive or negative. Douglas?
One of my first memories is, sorry, just context. I'm the youngest of 4 children. My father is a theoretical physicist who worked with Niels Bohr and other folks, and so is, you know, not surprisingly pretty good at math. And my mom has advanced degrees in finance, who's also pretty good at math. I'm dyslexic. I am not pretty good at math. One of my early memories is that sitting at the library table. I grew up in rural Arkansas, and I was sitting at the library table, which is just inside our screen porch. It's about August, so it's hot, it's wet, lots of bugs, smells bad. It's Arkansas. That was funny. Come on, y'all. That means no one here has ever been to Arkansas, actually. It's what I just learned. With my mom teaching me how to add again, because I don't actually know to this day how to add. I just know how to memorize, and I know how to cheat. And the feeling of, my brother's got a PhD in mathematics, ironically. My sister was employee number 4 at Siebel. So like my family's good at this stuff, and I'm so not. And that feeling of, oh my God, I'm not good enough, and I'm never going to be good enough, and I'm never going to achieve, it's hard. That's a bad place to be. And so that I found, I guess it's almost trite to say that entrepreneurs are driven by fear of failure, but I'm driven by fear of failure. And I spent my whole life trying to find ways to do the stuff that you can all do, because I can't, but I found smart cheats. And for me, part of being an entrepreneur is like, I built a company to cheat and to do something important, and that's what drives me.
Okay. So probably a common theme here. I grew up, my father's a colonel in the Army, so I grew up my whole life around leadership, and a very black and white Army colonel. The definition of success in life was directly tied to how many A's and B's did you have. That's the positive NPS. Negative NPS is how many C's and D's you had. And my F's were kind of off the NPS scale within my family. And so until I was 21 years old, was 100% convinced I was going to be homeless. And literally, like at 17 years old, people are like, oh, what are you going to do when you grow up? And I'm like, oh, I'm going to be homeless. And that was my self-worth was tied directly to not being able to contemplate anything but being homeless, because life is defined by grades. Grades are defined by intelligence. I had neither of those two, so therefore equals homeless. And I was saved by Morley Safer, if that's humanly possible. I walked into my house. I had been kicked out of 3 colleges, had ended up in a war because I got kicked out of CU with the 0.0, so ended up in the Army because it was the only place I could run to that my father couldn't catch me. And it was the 0.0, so I want to point out follow through in that one instance in my educational career. So I ended up in the Army, went to KU, got kicked out of KU, was home, hadn't told my parents I was going to get kicked out. And Morley Safer did a 20-minute episode on 60 Minutes on adult ADD and dyslexia. And literally I was watching it and I was like, that's me. Like I was like watching myself on television as they're interviewing these other people. And so I went back to KU and I asked them, I said, what do you have? Like, is there a pill I can take? There's this thing, I just need it to go away. And it turned out, and there's fortune, all of us in this room, I think, have those moments where luck hit you and it just, everything changed. Just so happened that the Menninger Clinic was one of the leading research facilities on adult ADD and dyslexia, and it was 20 miles down the road from KU in Topeka, Kansas. And so in the early 90s, because of my veteran status serving in Desert Storm, I was able to be a part of their study, and it fundamentally changed my life. And what's interesting is that lingering of thinking you're going to be homeless, it just stays with you. It's not something that goes away overnight. And when I had my very first job, I lasted 4 days. Apparently, don't play well in the sandbox with others. And it was around the fact that I was asking the CEO all these questions in this small company. Why are you doing what you're doing? This doesn't make any sense. And I'd never done anything with business and never taken a business class. And when you're dyslexic, 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2, but the answer is 2. I don't know why the answer is 2, it's just the answer is 2. It's not 3, it's not 1, it's 2. And I can see things in this 3-dimensional format that, ironically now, if I could take a pill and make dyslexia go away, I don't know about the rest of the stage, but I'd throw the pill in the trash because it defines now. I've gone from being homeless to being a very high energy, 3-dimensional ability to view things and think about things. And I am the most grateful person in the world for the people in my life who helped me, my wife and our chief of staff and my assistant that helped me through the challenges of dyslexia, but allow me to be the best version of myself. And I think any great dyslexic has that support staff around them.
Sure.
And I think, Jamie, you've been an unbelievable support staff to the community as a large. But you use that support staff because I don't know the difference between from and form, and I never will. And people who know me, that's the thing is you always know if I wrote the email. Everybody in my company has like the decoder ring of, they're like, Patrick didn't write that email. There's no misspellings in it.
Yeah.
So John, I'd love to hear your story.
It's very similar, and one thing you'll find, all of us dyslexics, we face a curveball in everything we do. But if you're an athlete and you learn the curveball's coming, you can take it to right field every time. Third grade, I couldn't read. And as they'd come down the aisle calling on people to read a couple sentences, I'd start to sweat, I'd get nervous, which made it worse, and I couldn't connect the dots. My parents are both doctors, tremendous emotional support, but they were teaching me to read at night, and they were teaching me the wrong swing. Teacher by the name of Miss Anderson spent 2.5 years with me after school, taught me how to take this and to be able to do the workarounds, which we've all learned, either through friends or otherwise. And I considered it a tremendous weakness. As it turns out, what dyslexics can do is you can visualize whether it's in 3-dimension, you and I can put facts together and just say A, B, Z, and I get people around me who can go D, E, F, G, H, I, J to get there. And once you've been dyslexic and you've been laughed at, you never laugh at others. You know how to connect emotionally, you know the pain that people felt, etc. But also once you overcome a tremendous challenge in your life, I think you're more a product of how you handle your challenges than your successes. So you gain the capability to overcome that. And so you can connect in many ways. And I kept it a secret as CEO, didn't tell anybody about my weakness until a little girl, I'd take our children to work day with 500 people in the room, tried to ask a question and she couldn't get it out. And she broke into tears and said, I'm dyslexic. And I'd forgotten the mic was on, and I said, I am too. Here's how you handle it. You think about concepts, walked her through it, said, try again on the question. She did ruler on the question. I got up and realized I just exposed to the whole group I was dyslexic. But you need role models, and you can take what is a weakness and make it a strength. I give speeches. I cannot read a speech. I'll lose my place. I'm not effective. So I had to find a workaround, which is I just talk. And I come right off stage, I feed off your energy, I memorize the 3-dimensional concept I want, and then I just talk like it's a conversation. So you take your biggest weakness in life and you make it your strength, and somehow we'll figure out how to do that earlier. I'm writing a book, and one of the topics is how do you think like a dyslexic? It's how do you think like a teenager, just unstructured and free form.
You know, it's interesting that you mentioned that is, you know, when I think in our roles, we do a lot of speeches. Yeah. And the trick that I've learned is that all of my speeches, each PowerPoint slide is just a picture.
Yes.
And each picture is a chapter.
Me too. Your outline in your head.
And it is just, it's like, I gave a speech recently, we're in the ethics business. And it was just like an image of Rosa Parks, an image of the Little Rock Nine, and each one of those is a story. And each story you only have to memorize, you know, it's 8 chapters, memorize it, but words, no.
Yeah. And that's one of the things back to the universities. If you can take people with learning disabilities, most of them actually are above average IQ, you can take them and make them not only more productive in society, you can really unleash power. Right. And once you learn how to do it, you have no fear.
Well, the first book that I wrote actually with a mathematician that is very heavily dyslexic. And of course I didn't know that until he told me at some point. And I can see his ability actually to think multidimensionally.
Interesting. I can't do that at all. Like I don't recognize this superpower you guys have. I'm short on.
So how did you get into the world that you're in with? Because you said that math was not your thing.
And yet I do math for a living.
Who knew? And yet you do math really well. So how does your brain function around that process?
Yeah, I mean, so part of it's like, yeah, you guys said I can't do math, I'm going to prove you wrong. Like, so part of it's just like, I just work really hard.
Right.
But part of it's also, so for me, so maybe it's the same thing. So I don't have a notion of sort of physical location and place. I have dysgraphia as well, so I'm not very good at that. But I do have a really intuitive sense, kind of, John, like I think you said, of being able to take two facts that look quite different, and for me, somehow they're not different.
Yes.
And so I end up sort of being a little bit kind of the crazy, like, that's stupid, that can't possibly be right guy, but with people around me who are really good at either showing me that I'm wrong or demonstrating it. But I really wish I had this ability to put things in 3 space like you guys are talking about. I'm jealous. Can you teach me?
Well, you also connect emotionally by showing your weakness. other people connect with you.
Yeah.
And none of us are perfect, but when you show you care, they can connect and they can sense. We can almost finish each other's sentences. It's actually scary.
It is.
my question,
In
though-
terms of never talking about it, and we know the movie.
So it's funny. I mean, I'll finish the story that I was saying to you briefly in the little antechamber. I used to work at Charles Schwab, and Charles Schwab is founded by a guy named Charles Schwab, who goes by Chuck. And Chuck is amazing. He's quiet. He's soft-spoken, but when he looks at you, you feel this amazing emotional connection. Like he's
Yes, you
spending,
do.
he's this moment, and he's with you, and that's okay. And that's
Yeah.
and he taught me so much. I think particularly two things. One, I think he used to say is he used to tell everyone like, "Hey, I'm dyslexic. If you don't like how I deal with my email, it's me, right?" Like, and I thought that was, and he didn't have any embarrassment about it. Like it's just a fact. I loved that about him. The other thing I loved about him was he was emotional. I mean, he was smart. He is smart. Like I'm not criticizing him. He's a very emotional guy, and he was the first person who I looked at. And I said, "Okay, I'm kind of like that. Like I'm emotional that way. I'm connected that way, and I can't do those things he can't do, and he's not ashamed. Why am I hiding this shit?"
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting, as I've known other people with dyslexia, I think that emotion is a trait. I think it's because of all those different emotions. When you think you're dumb,
The world of
and like literally, those are the feelings and emotions you have for whether it's 10, 15, right? Because we're judged by our ability to read, our ability to do those things. That creates emotion.
Yeah.
Especially when you're surrounded by your parents, and we're all fortunate we had, in their own ways, successful,
Yeah.
intelligent parents. And that becomes a weight that I think lasts with you later in life.
We have only a few minutes, and I want to get one question in that I think is important. This is a difficult panel, because they're all doing this all on their own.
But we have, but we know what the topic is.
Well,
right here.
except we can't read it, so it doesn't make any difference.
And the
Hey,
picture's
so-
up here for us.
the problem with being dyslexic is you wake up at night with a headache and you go to take a valid.
So the question is the following. You guys are three exceptional people. So the challenges that you're describing are very similar, but you were able to overcome them through maybe luck, maybe the right person you met, or your individual effort. What should we be doing? What should society be doing, though, so that it's not only the exceptional people that can make it? That there are lots of people, I'm sure, dyslexic, that are normal intelligence. And how do we harness that power?
Yeah. I think first of all we've got to be more public about stuff. It's got to be okay to be, there's a whole history in cognitive science about whether learning styles exist or not.
Yep.
You pick your poison. You can argue either side, but it's pretty clear that there are people who respond differently to certain kinds of stimuli than others. We in the United States, particularly, although also true in many other countries, have an educational system which was designed in an era when the goal of going to school was to train you to be a better factory worker. You'll do it at the same time, at the same pace, in the same order, and that's just the wrong answer. It's not just the wrong answer for dyslexics, it's the wrong answer for any number of other people. Like, for God's sake, at some point, somebody should care about teaching our kids.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to, I think all of us could respond in that same educational way. I think
Which would be
it's
unhelpful.
Yeah, it is, I think the important thing is if you could take away the feeling of failure that we all three had, and I know if you ask this question of any other dyslexic, so it's understanding that the definition of intelligence is extraordinarily broad. And to try to define, it's hard when grades are that one marker. And so it's opening up, I became a parent later in life. I just had my first child, my first son.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
It would change
I
your
woke
life
up
all for the better.
at 4:30 this morning in Denver. So my son's 15 months old, and it's weird. I kind of deep down hope he's dyslexic. It's a weird thing to
wow.
wish.
Interesting.
But
I
it's,
don't.
when I think about like a Waldorf education or the idea of being able to teach a child whose brain is, there's actually a real excitement in that. So I think it's just looking at intelligence differently.
Wow.
I think it also goes back to you've got to have your role models, because
Yep.
when you think you're not smart, you know that your parents aren't the role model. They didn't have the same issues. So I think talking about it's very important. As you know, I almost passed on this panel because right now my hands are sweating
Thank
on
you
the
for not.
topic. And I decided, no, I need to get up here. You've got to share with others what it's like and how does it occur as you move forward. Then you've got to say, how do you train us a little bit differently? And I think that's true with disabilities of all type. is you can get so much out of people and they're capable of so much more if you just give them a chance. But you've got to learn how to think like a dyslexic. You've got to learn how to think like a person that has lost their sight. How do you take the disabilities and make it a strength? I will not sweat in front of 25,000 people with the President of the United States beside me giving a speech. Doesn't bother me at all. I would have thrown up before a speech to 2 people before I learned how to think in concepts and abstract approach. So teaching people how to take a negative and make it a positive and get out there as an example, I think is key. And I think taking your weaknesses, making it a strength, including the emotional connection, which I would not underestimate. I mean, it's scary how much dyslexics can almost connect within 2 minutes of a conversation.
Thank you. I think we are almost running out of time, but maybe anybody wants to try to answer the question, why do dyslexics make great entrepreneur?
Because we
In
got
1
our
minute
asses
or less?
kicked for a long time.
Because we make crappy employees. I mean, it's obvious.
And we have a great sense of humor. Yeah, it's very simple, guys, and I'd like for each one of us to think about it a little bit.
Yeah.
We think out of box.
We do. Yep.
If you overcome dyslexia, you have no fear. I mean, once you overcome it, what can somebody do to you on it? And you care about people. Your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think that you can see, it'd be interesting to understand, to know the answer to this question is, if you look at people with dyslexia that have been able to work through that, is there a higher level of EQ? Because we see things differently. I actually wish that I could occasionally give up EQ, because I can literally be in front of a room and feel this side versus this side, or I'm talking to someone, it's just like, sometimes I just want to be like, stop. I don't want to know. And I wonder if it'd be interesting to know that question. I also want to, Jamie, I want to give you a thank you for doing this, for the work that you've done on this. You've invested so much time, money, and energy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.